There we
Ooh,
are.
ooh, that caught like almost right away. Although if it
Yeah.
would give me the video feed, that would be cool.
I
Ooh, there we are.
you
Look
can
at
see it.
that.
And I even
That's,
remember to update the title, even though I know it won't stay that title.
yeah,
But at least people will know they're in the right place at the right time.
that's true. That's true. And here we are. I have to say, I've been having mixed feelings. I'm a little upset with you. You promised me things in the book would get a lot better, and it got like a hair better and then a lot worse.
I'm
So
like,
I'm feeling a little misled.
Talula. I know. It's, yeah.
Um, and while we're like waiting for people to come in, are you like all ready and packed for pens? Do you have a lot of stuff to do?
Not really. I mean, it's just a couple days, right? So
Yeah.
I I did some laundry. So
I'll be doing that like tomorrow, like evening, to like throw in a bag real quick Wednesday or Thursday morning before I head out.
yeah,
Um,
I mean we're going to restaurants where it's, probably
oh
no
yeah, it's
shirt,
wear
no
whatever you
shoes.
want. No,
Well, but no shirt, no shoes, so I might as well like wear something decent. And my usual uniform of sweatpants probably just doesn't cut it. So,
oh yeah, you have to bump up to at least like nice looking leggings or something.
yeah, jeans.
I have to say though, I'm not necessarily overly concerned about not wearing a t-shirt to dinner.
Well, I recently decided that a blazer over anything makes it like business casual. So, blazer and a t-shirt, I mean,
I don't even know that I want to get on board with the blazer. Like,
well, yeah,
I
at
might
this
bring
moment,
something halfway decent for like the Friday night dinner, but Thursday, yeah, I don't care. That's the travel day. Like,
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
supposed to like look presentable for the travel day. I mean, it's just a miracle that I showed up at all. Like,
This is true. Yes. Yeah, so yeah, that it's a travel day for me too, but for me it's only 2 hours. So
for me, it's like 5 to 6, depending on what the world is doing. Hi, Maradim. I like how you and I greet the world the same way. I'm also like, howdy do. Or what do I say when you answer the phone? Howdy doody. I say howdy doody.
howdy doody. Oh Lord.
Well, I mean, I can't I'm probably scarred from years of watching Friends and when Ross would be depressed and he'd be like, "Hi." Like that's oftentimes why like when I call you, yeah, and I'm
Hi.
like and you're like, "Hello?" Like like you're like, "Why did the phone ring?" And I'm like, "What's wrong?" You know,
Howdy doody is perfectly acceptable.
yeah, I want the greeting to be interesting. I don't
Yeah,
want to be like
yeah.
everyone else that just says hi.
I want to be one of those people that's so important that they answer the phone. Yeah. What? Go for cake.
I'm totally gonna answer the phone like that next time. Instead of this is how I picture you when you answer the phone. Hello?
Is that really how I answer the phone?
Yeah, that's how I'm always like, what's wrong?
All right then.
Oh, Marodem got mail today, a certain book about applique.
Ooh.
I've been like kind of running around trying to like throw some supplies into my bin to take with me to kind of do some stuff, and then I realized I don't have anything in my hands at the moment to make templates out of to do like prepared edge. What is this face that you're making?
It hasn't even started yet, and you're making excuses about how you
Well,
can't keep up.
no. I'm all prepped to do like embroidery. But I was thinking like I had thrown like some fabric in there to maybe just like prep some applique to stitch, like prepared edge. And then I was like, when I was watching a tutorial, because I was like, I know how to do it, I just need a refresher. I was like, crap, I don't have anything to make templates to iron over. So I will just have to do only embroidery stuff, I guess. And then maybe I could do like some fabric picking, like choices for which block to go with. But oh, Janet received her book as well. At least people are prepared on time.
No, this is
Instead of like 3 weeks in and someone's like, oh, I haven't ordered my book yet.
But there's nothing wrong with that either.
No, but I'm just saying like people are like, let's do this.
I'm very excited about that. Very excited. Using cardstock to make templates. Yeah. I'd use freezer paper or
I can't really like freezer paper just like never seems to want to work for me.
Well, I use freezer paper. Hey, Kate. I use freezer paper the way that my mom taught me and not the way I see people use it now.
Well, I need something though that can be oomphy enough to kind of iron the edge over. So maybe like manila folders.
Yeah. Cereal box.
Yeah, I mean, well, I have a whole thing of manila folders like right here. I don't have a whole lot of cardstock, but yeah, that could work. I guess I could bring a couple manila folders with me.
Yeah, folders are a good weight, you know, of like the oak tag, I believe is that's what manila folders, like that's the weight is oak tag. Wait, do you remember that from school? Did they not have oak tag when you were in school? Okay. Am I too old?
I mean, if they did, they didn't discuss it with us.
So you're gonna use scraps from your grandmother. That's awesome.
I finally like dug into my like enormous stash of fat quarters to pull stuff out, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna use fat quarters, which makes me excited because once I cut some very small shapes out of it, it's only gonna use like
using
like a triangle. But it's going to be under a fat quarter then, which means I can now cut it into my scrap user system. So,
okay. You know, my scrap system, it's in a box that could hold a human.
It's in a coffin? So it's in a coffin.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
I just throw it all in there.
Stuff in there. So DeMarie says I should draw the template and then I consider ironing freezer paper 1 or 2 layers before cutting out the template. But see, so my issue is that I want to do prepared edge. So I need freezer paper won't be oomphy enough really to like iron the edge over onto it.
Well, see, the way my mom taught me to do that is not to reverse and iron the freezer paper onto your fabric, but rather, well, I don't even remember how she kept it, but a dab of glue on the paper side, put it down, and then you literally use the tip of an iron. And if you have one of those Clover irons, those itty bitty little irons,
I do.
And you iron the little edge over so it gets caught by the freezer paper, and then iron it down on your fabric.
I'm not sure I'm totally understanding what you're describing, but
so like, okay, so imagine that this is the print side of or the paper side of the freezer paper,
and then
this would be the plastic side, right? Yeah.
Okay.
So you would put that on your, like if this is your fabric, you'd put it down on your fabric, right? And then this is the part that's dangerous, the plastic, right? And you start like folding the edges of your fabric around, and this is the plastic, right? So you have to be careful so that your iron doesn't touch it. And you're literally just catching the edges that would be turned under all the way around, and the plastic of the freezer paper is holding it down. Did that still not make sense?
Not particularly. Janet asks, what's the difference between needle turn and prepared edge? Janet, with needle turn, you're literally taking the raw edge and using your needle to fold
as you go
edge under. And then with prepared edge, you've got a shape that already has a seam allowance ironed under for you. So the edge is already clean. and you're not turning it. And the reason I'm considering doing that, this will make it make sense to you, is I was considering doing a prepared edge with a blanket stitch. So you could see that on top instead of trying to do an invisible kind of needle turn situation. Just to kind of combine like some actual applique with some like red work embroidery. I was actually thinking of doing like green work too, which I don't know that anyone's ever really called it green work, but
well, I mean, that's the thing. There's black work and there's red work, but why isn't there green work?
Or blue work.
Actually, pink work. I have a bunch of quilt blocks that were torn. I mean, literally torn from a quilt. Like they have sashing, but it's all torn. So I don't know, like they just were torn from quilt. But anyway, they are pink pearl cotton. And it's all like probably late 19th century, based on what the imagery is. So I'm like, pink work.
Yeah. So that's what I was toying. I mean, I might, who knows, maybe I'll do like a little bit of everything. I also noticed that there's a particular fuzzy mane in the chat there.
I thought Fuzzy Mane was streaming, but
I mean, he was. I guess he's not anymore. Before we like really get going here, why don't we give out our next reading?
Yeah.
And that is gonna be Tuesday. Oh my God, Tuesday, June 4th. Wasn't it January yesterday?
I know.
And we're gonna do chapters 14 through 16. You know, we're still here in Legacy. After that,
were we? Oh, we were only supposed to go through 13.
Of course, you read ahead because you're
read
ahead.
Whoops.
Well, you're just a little more prepared for next time. So yeah, 14 through 16, and that'll give us one more chunk after that. And then, in case anyone has forgotten, the next book is Crazy Quilts by Penny McMorris. So
I think we can safely say that Penny McMorris did not write a book that's going to make you cry. I gotta say, this one, it's getting to me a little bit, but
yeah, this one is. And it's funny, I know Mary Kay warned you that it was like a little more academic, but did she warn you that you were going to need tissues?
No, she said heavy. And I thought she meant academically heavy. Like, as soon as she sent me my copy and I flipped through it and I was like, oh, yeah, there's lots of pictures of quilts, but there's also pictures of family, but also a lot of text. So this is a story. And I'm thinking academically heavy, lots of reading, lots of history. Yeah, it is academically heavy with things like history, but good grief.
So you think she actually meant like
I think she actually meant the fact that every chapter leaves you going, oh, Talula, how did you survive this? Yeah.
And just for anyone wondering why I'm gonna be like drinking like crazy and you see me going like this, I'm like, my shoulders are killing me today, like they're really sore, and my allergies are horrendous.
Mine so I've got, too.
Like, super tickle throat and stuff. So
I've got an eye that's like half swollen shut. So thank goodness for the glare of my glasses. It doesn't look like I'm like Quasimodo.
Conjunctivitis.
No, it is definitely not conjunctivitis. It is my left eye does this sometimes. It is more allergic than my right eye, I guess. I don't know.
the way your like body works, the pollen just gets in there better.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I've always had itchy eye situation just from allergies, but yeah, my left eye is usually a little bit worse than my right eye.
Well, we can't notice it, so your beauty filter is working fantastic. So, and then next Wednesday the 5th, we have our Needlework Nights where we're looking at 6-inch sewing advertising rulers.
Tiny rulers.
So we've got those, and if you have any that you want to share, you can send them to quiltnerding@gmail.com, and we will share them with the group if you want to talk about stuff. And then, are you doing both of your streams next week?
Yes, both of my streams will be back next week. I as I told everybody yesterday, I will not be streaming on Thursday because travel day. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, Sunday asked me tonight if we were going to try to do a pop-up from Penn's. Because for those that don't know, we're going to the Penn Dry Goods show.
Yeah. And I had
this
said
Friday,
yesterday that I just thought it would be too difficult for us.
Yeah, I was like, well, I don't know
and...
when would we possibly do that? I was like, we could try to take photos and maybe a little like short, like reel kind of video or something like that, but I don't know that there'll really be any time. Trust me, if there's time and we get a wild hair, it could happen, but I don't see. I would think if anything, potentially it could happen down in like New Oxford, but
yeah. Yeah.
I
don't see it happening just because there's so much. Yeah.
Well, and it was hard enough for us to do it when we were in Pennsylvania in April. We were literally there the last night going, oh crap.
Yeah, and we had plenty of evenings open for that, and we were still a hot mess.
So Janet said after this last reading, she can more understand the Southern disdain for the North. I don't know that I got that kind of takeaway from it. I can just, I definitely am getting far more of an understanding of the hardship after the Civil War, which I will fully admit I was, obviously like I understood as kind of the brief history you get in school, but I was wholly ignorant to the real firsthand stories of things.
Yeah. When they basically burned everything to the ground. So that's what these people had to live with. So and poured salt. So that's what they had to live with. And and of course I read ahead, so I got to be careful what I say. I'm sorry. I kept thinking to myself, I need to check and see how far we're supposed to read this week, and I just kept reading.
It's only like it's posted in 15 places.
I know, and never mind that I'm an admin for all of most of those places. So, but yeah, oh gosh, I think that the Bottoms, now Tom's mother, of course, was Eliza. I think things were really rough for her because she had 3 sons, no husband, all the stuff that came along with that farm and the financial situation. But overall, everybody we have read about so far, I mean, as hard as they worked, they still had it better than some people. And that's what's like, because despite the fact that even people that were considered well off and had help, had servants, they themselves were still out there doing the farm work. So, I mean, it was like an all hands on deck situation, really, no matter how, the general feeling. Yeah.
I can tell you, Janet, I experienced some of that feeling firsthand when I was in the South for grad school. And you're one of them Yankees.
Them Yankees.
Like, oh, well, you're fun.
Yeah. Well, I get called that by my Southern relatives for living in Maryland. And I'm like, last time I checked, we're south of the Mason-Dixon. If that's how you want to be about it. But yeah, I mean, again, going back to the fact that, I mean, we don't have to beat the dead horse of the Civil War, but a lot of these people were like, they were not, I mean, especially the women and children, they didn't have a stake in anything that was happening, other than their husbands and their brothers and their sons going to war. So women could not vote on any of this. They, and obviously they had their thoughts about it, but, and then the outcome of it was, well, I get to work my hands to the bone for the rest of my life if we even survive, so.
I mean, a little tiny smattering of sunlight in your gloom and doom there in chapter 9 is the part on right on 71 on the first page there is that the realization that with the couple of hired people they had that lived in and some other people that Talula's rheumatism went away.
Yeah. And and what I'm reading there is that, yes, she is still Um, you know, the, she is still doing things like milking and raising chickens and cooking and washing and ironing and working on quilts. But I think she's probably not washing clothes with turpentine. I am positive that this joint swelling that they called rheumatism um was
Had to do with poisoning.
yes, it's neurological damage. I mean, that's what I got from that. So that was my, I mean, because how does being like um where does it say it? First time since childhood she was pain free. And like working on a quilt doesn't help that.
You know, it was funny. I saw that like when she's like quilting, and I'm thinking like there's been so many people that have claimed that the act of quilting gave them arthritis in their hands. So, but the only thing that stinks is there's no mention though if she's still washing with turpentine, so we can't test
Well,
that
see,
theory
that's the thing. I mean,
100%.
she has gone to a new household.
Yeah.
That's what tells me. I mean, look at this scientifically. She went from one household where she had this, you know, these physical troubles since childhood that appeared when her stepmother came in the picture, and then she gets married and moves to another household and doesn't have the problem anymore. So I'm going, had something to do with her stepmother and perhaps all of the horrible chores she did with turpentine.
I mean,
I mean,
it definitely looks like she's not doing the same kind of physical work as her. Because remember, when she was living at home still with her stepmother, she was basically turned into the Cinderella maid.
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
she's not that here. She's just a mother here and not kind of waiting on the whole family kind of a situation the same way.
Spoiler alert. This
No, why are you gonna spoil stuff?
The Cinderella situation is like, and I think that this is common in a lot of families. It is just perpetual. You know, you get, especially when you're gonna pop out like a dozen children, the older children end up having to take care of the younger children. And there does sometimes get to be that situation where the one, like the oldest girl becomes like the responsible one, you know, and ends up taking on a lot. Hey, Arlene.
Hi, Arlene.
Yeah, and Dee Marie, yes, hearty family. I can't imagine feeding all those people. No kidding. And you know, there was all of her children, and then the Pierces, they come up right in here.
Yeah, they take in Birdie. Like,
and I mean, yeah, it's just all these people constantly,
and
all
they
the
have a couple hired men that live in, like,
yeah,
and
also
I mean, can we just take a minute to be so very thankful for the amount of space we have as humans now?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, this little space I keep for myself is glorious. Can you imagine in 1890 I'd have to share this with like 7 other people?
yeah. Like I'm just like, oh my God. They're describing like further on down there, like in the last chapter when they moved to Alabama, and they're describing 14 people living in like a 2-room house. And I'm like, no,
You know, and another thing that I kind of has been like this big question mark in my mind all along is Tom and his malaria.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, I mean, this is you know, another one of those things where I guess like ignorance is bliss. I really never knew that malaria was that big of a deal in the US. Like that
I
it was,
didn't either. Half of me wonders if it really was malaria or something else.
well, I mean, it's entirely possible because I mean, we're talking about southern United States, and it is entirely possible that he truly had malaria. But when he says it's the very last sentence, chapter 9, and moving on into or on 71, moving into 72, it says on the trip to Coleman, Alabama, he had driven a mule team, blah blah blah, with hope in his heart, for no case of malaria had ever been reported there. So I'm guessing it's so that his children don't get malaria.
No, I think it's for him.
But once you have malaria, you have malaria. I
but
mean,
maybe
it's
they
like,
don't know that at that
yeah,
point.
well, Oh, there, when we get to chapter 12, I don't know if you've been reading the endnotes.
No, not really. No.
There is an endnote that I flipped to and was like, oh my God, this sounds exactly like some of my like dumb redneck like relatives that say things like this. And I'm just like, you really don't think that's true, right? We'll get there.
Oh. Wow, everyone
Since
stay tuned for the tea. Like
Yeah, since you haven't been reading them, you clearly don't know what I'm talking about.
I originally started reading them, but
Yeah.
then when I just saw that they mostly were just like,
Mhm.
oh, this is from this interview and this, I figured, there's
Right,
probably not
yeah.
anything real juicy in
Yeah.
there.
There are a few juicy tidbits. So definitely like as you get to a chapter, just flip and just see like is there something? Because there are some endnotes that are have
Interesting.
more, yes, they have more meat in them than just the the actual biographical or whatever.
Well, since we're still here in chapter 9, like please on 72, like let's admire
Oh yeah,
Talula's
the oak leaf.
magnolia
Yeah.
leaf. Well,
Oh, magnolia leaf, yeah.
yeah, like
And
that's just like absolutely stunning. And then on the next page there, the
I
string quilt
love the string
variation
quilt. Yeah.
and just who while I hold this up here, who is that one made by again? I forget. Was it Eliza?
Um, Eliza, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this being one of the poorest of the bunch, or one out of the poor bunch of quilts.
Yeah. No, I find that very, I don't know, that quilt is very calming to me. And maybe that was part of the
Yeah,
goal.
I love this quilt. It is so cool to look at. And like, because you look at it and you're like, I don't think that they're all exactly the same shape,
Hmm.
and it's like, how did she get it to come together? And of course, it's not, perfectly square, but it's square enough,
Yeah.
and it always amazes me. I mean, you see these kind of like make do quilts and
Hmm.
how they a lot of times would just throw them together and somehow they made them work out. I mean, it looks like the bottom row, those are all very like nice and block shaped, but as you get up, like there's, I don't know, one of these middle rows, like some of them are weird shaped and stuff, but it still came out as a generally rectangular quilt.
Well, and then the last quilt in this chapter, this is still so far, I think, my favorite quilt that is in the book.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And I actually really like that this one even has the pattern reference.
yeah,
I
the ladies
definitely
art
like,
company.
yeah, I definitely think I might kind of like seek that reference out. I'm sure I've probably seen this pattern before. Something about it being in these fabrics though. Is
Yeah, and there's that one red one, and
mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess there could have been some of these other ones. Like, well,
Yeah, the
they
some of
still,
the faded might like
yeah, some
but
of the faded though. That like that second row, the ones on either side of the blue, they almost look like, I don't know, like could have been a matter. I don't know.
I feel
Um,
like style wise it would make more sense for them to be red because if they were green, it would look kind of weird with some of the rest of this. I feel
mhm,
like it wouldn't fit the aesthetic.
yeah,
But
but
even because you see like some of that sashing there is still green.
uh-huh. Well,
And then
and
you
then
got all that faded sashing around it.
there's also a bunch that are white, like the one that's right beside the red, the really vivid
Mm-hmm.
red.
Yep.
I'm guessing that like is just a totally fugitive, and I don't know. I
Unless
was
it's
red.
like a shirting print.
Yeah, but I feel like I don't think it is. I feel like there's several of them. That one, and then the one at the front of that row, the whole complete left-hand side of the row, and then the next row.
Oh, you know
No.
what? Some of this faded is hand dyed pink. Pink and green.
Oh,
Perhaps once
so
red
this
and
one
green.
home dyed pink and yeah.
And
Yeah.
the
Okay.
hand carded cotton batting is very thick.
Yes, you can make it as thick as you want. I haven't had a chance to work on my cotton this week, but when I get
Hey,
back
yeah,
from
do you have it right there to show us? Because for people that might
um
not have seen it.
yeah, a sec. Oh, It's my working bag.
And for anybody that might not know what's going on here, Steph is literally going through the actual process of hand making your own batting, like the historic way, originally like all by hand.
Yeah, and this, I mean, you could see these. It
Yeah,
these are just these little bats I've laid over each other. That this will need to sort of be rearranged. Once I actually sandwich it. Because yeah, I'm ending up with little bats that are about that big because of my cards. I don't have, I think typically at least the cards, the fiber cards that I've seen that are sort of standard today are usually about that big. And these little ones that I have are, I think, more for like needle felting, like to, just to card some, but
not brushing dogs.
right, right. But yeah, I was thinking, if I was gonna be in the business of making a lot of my own batting, I'd probably go invest in bigger cards because, this doesn't take long to do, but it's long enough that it would be nice to have bigger pieces. So. Anyhow, but it's fun, it's the kind of thing one can do while watching TV or sitting on the porch talking to the neighbors.
So moving into chapter 10, I found it interesting to discover that like Tom was somewhat of like a little like inventor, of things that didn't go anywhere. I think it's absolutely wild that like, he's got like a patent here.
Yes, and yes, definitely. I think that they all were very inventive, all of them, the whole family. Well, did you notice what this thing is called?
Combination cultivator.
And what?
Am I just like not looking at something?
In the description, combination cultivator, guano distributor.
Oh,
it's a poop spreader.
Now, but it's specifically a bat poop spreader?
Well, no, and that's the thing. I'm like, I don't know. I'm assuming maybe they've used guano as a generic term for poop because you are
Instead
correct.
of manure.
Guano is a bat and lizard poo kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know who you call scat, guano. I don't know. I'm not sure like what all the different poop terms are, but yes, I suspect that's what this is. It's for scooping up the dirt and distributing manure. But I mean, that's what it sounds like to me based on looking at the design of this item.
Yeah, it kind of looks like it gets the poo deeper into the ground than just on top.
Correct.
Yeah, so
but before that, roll back to the beginning of chapter 10. Did you know that there was an earthquake in Charleston, South Carolina?
Oh yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like earthquakes on the East Coast are very, very rare.
And they're usually very baby. Like the last earthquake we had here wasn't that long ago. It was like a few months ago. Remember in
it was,
New Jersey?
yeah.
And I didn't even feel it. I thought it was a truck going by.
I didn't either. But
oh, Janet said guano from birds as well, probably their chickens.
Yeah, they're chickens. You're right.
I've only ever heard of guano referred to in terms of bats. So maybe it's like flying things produce guano.
Yeah, and chickens are kind of like they used to be dinosaurs, so I think lizards too. I mean, I know I've heard guano pertaining to lizards too. So yeah, I guess guano is non-mammalian.
Non-mammalian?
Yes.
What a term.
Let's go with that. Yeah, and of course when their baby died, that just, oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, and naive little me not realizing that would be one of 5 children that die.
Well, and that's the unfortunate thing is like the reason why they had so many children is because so many children died. I have been listening to a book, because because this is the only book I have time to read. I actually listen to books a lot. But it's by this very cool author that you guys would probably all love him. And of course I'm drawing a blank, but it's Ian, he's a British writer, but anyway, he writes these things called the Time Traveler's Guide to, and he basically is like, if you got in a time machine and went to this other era, what would life be like? And so the one I'm reading right now or listening to is the early 1800s.
I was gonna say,
So
you should be listening to the one for the Civil War.
he does not. He only writes about England, so he doesn't have. There is not one for that. But so yeah, it's the Restoration period in England, and which are the Georgian period. And where was I going with this? Oh, the statistics he provides for mortality are staggering, and I mean, this is the 1800s, and of course, things happened differently in UK and Europe than they did here, simply because of what was going on with us, wars and all the stuff. But the Industrial Revolution, like the way that was hitting in the UK with the train and all that stuff, they basically said that in some places the average or median. I can't remember it. I always get confused over average and median or mean or whatever. But basically, like in some places, the average age of mortality was 17, because people and children were in industry too, right? So people died like real young because of industrial accidents. And then, but they also said for your first year of your life, I want to say you were more likely to die than to live. Like it's like infant mortality was so bad. But if you could reach 5, then things were going well. Until
you might
got
stand a chance until 17.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just, but then there's all these people that also live to be 80, so like it was kind of, I guess the careful people lived. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I just go back to the fact that, it's not that people didn't love their children or care about them, but they gave birth to their children assuming that they might very well die, and that they might very well die giving birth to them. That's the other part that's, yeah, I want to say that there's something that comes up like that in here, but I don't think it's
her sister Minta dies shortly after giving birth.
Okay, so yeah, all right. I couldn't remember where that came up.
Which, well, the only thing is that it's a little vague. It doesn't say like she died from giving birth, but she very well could have died from complications.
Well, yeah. And what did they call that? It's puerperal fever. It's basically like you get some type of infection during the birthing process.
I was gonna say, doesn't it also sometimes happen when not all the placenta comes out?
Yeah.
Like you kind of get septic from that?
I think that it's like a fever, like a childbirth type fever. And yeah, I think it's because of infection and stuff. And I mean, who knows? I mean, giving birth in your home is not the most
with not clean things. And, yeah.
I mean, yes, giving birth in your own home, it's the sterility. It's not there.
Well, they didn't even know about really sterilities,
True. Well, yeah, I mean, at this point, medical science did know that like dirt could kill you. They just didn't have any way of curing it, But yeah, the baby died of cholera, I think, right?
2 infants died of cholera.
Yeah. Oh, so sad. And cholera was very common all throughout the 1800s. It was like, yeah.
And that comes, I mean, you get cholera really easily from things like not washing your hands and then eating.
Yeah.
Is there something more positive in this chapter?
Well, the orange bud quilt is pieced, I think, right? That's what is so insane about some of these quilts and it's not just this one. I think there's another one where it's mentioned about, it's pieced. This is not applique. This is pieced. Those are set in like, I mean,
and the quilting on it, like that little stippling around the buds is just bananas.
Yeah.
DeMarie just mentioned about Minta there, who had her husband who would not hydrate
Yes.
Talula's
Mm-hmm.
feverish baby. And
Yeah.
notice how Talula said that her and her husband would not hire that doctor again, and her beloved sister Minta was offended.
Not happy. Yeah. Well, your husband and his bad medical advice killed my baby.
Well, I mean, they know well enough about dehydration at this point, and that's usually what cholera, that's usually how they died, is from the
Yes.
dehydration.
Dehydration,
So,
because you can't, yeah, it goes straight through.
yep.
Um, Trying to think.
I'm really, really sad that this orange bug quilt is lost. Like
Yeah.
they don't.
Yeah,
This was
definitely.
one of the
And
ones they still have not found.
yeah, and I feel like it was probably something that was oh, the stepmother. Annalisa, isn't her name? Annalisa,
Mhm.
Annalisa. It's
Annalisa.
funny how in the book she spelled it differently than she did in her paper. So I'm wondering if sh as she was going through and getting like documentation, that the spelling was maybe more often with a Z than an S.
DeMarie just made a good point that potentially if the doctor gave bad medical advice for the baby, then he maybe had bad medical advice that contributed to Minta's death.
That is a very good point.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to do something about him before he kills again. Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, and just in general, I mean, in some ways, I think some of the stuff you hear about the way people died, you're like, common sense should tell us that, they could have done X, Y, and Z or whatever. But again, like if our common sense is based on the fact that we know like bacteria causes infection and, so do viruses. And, if you get a bacterial infection, you should get some antibiotic, all that, like that's all common sense to us now.
Or
But
things like hand washing.
yeah, oh yeah, exactly. But they didn't have that knowledge then, or they had knowledge, but they didn't necessarily have the tools. So I don't know. I mean, this is one of those time periods where I'm kind of like, I know that they still didn't know a lot of stuff or they didn't have technology, but also were the doctors that bad? Like, I guess they were. Um, yeah, I mean, not giving water to a baby that is severely dehydrated from cholera is just like, to me, one step up from like tasting urine to see if you have diabetes.
Well,
I mean, it's just like,
keep
what?
keep one thing in mind here, that like when we're here, like we still have things like miasma theory, like, and stuff like that.
Right.
So
Yes. 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 Anyone could hang on a shingle. You're absolutely right. You did not need a license at this point in time, I don't think.
mhm.
Um, yeah. So,
Moving on to chapter 11.
where there's more grief. Had to get a wet nurse.
Yeah, lost another child to cholera.
Mhm. Um, oh, so all these people, the quilt palettes, they talk about the quilt palettes a lot in here.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, that's just something that's like so out of my childhood. I mean, that was always like, we'll throw down a pallet, and a pallet was always a stack of quilts.
Like how many is considered a stack for a pallet?
Two or three.
Mhm.
And the third one might be what you put over top of you. But yeah, like two, and it's folded up to about the size of your body. So, if you're small, you might only need like one or two folded up quilts.
Mhm. And it made like just enough oomph on the ground that you
So that
weren't
you're
gonna
not sleeping
die.
on you're not sleeping on like a hard floor.
Hard
Oh.
service.
But I
Yeah,
have
I
to
know.
say, having slept on quilt pallets all the way up until I was a teenager at some relatives' homes, maybe this princess could feel the pee, but it's one of those things where don't sleep on your side.
Roger.
I think we're having a storm. I'm hearing rain just
Oh yeah.
pounding. Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that I found very interesting in this chapter, for one, two of the quilts. And the one I want to mention, other than like this make do quilt, is so awesome. But the first one I want to mention is the Dutch tulip quilt.
Yeah, the Dutch tulip. This is just so amazing.
And I feel it's really important to mention, because I'm going to just read the little blurb here. This is Dutch tulip, circa 1950s, probably made by, I'm assuming it's Jerusha.
Jerusha.
Jerusha Murphy Rogers, Talula's aunt and sister of her mother, Molly Murphy Gilbert.
Molly.
Her and her husband, Hosea Rogers, died young after the Civil War, leaving two sons, John and Charles, who were like brothers to Talula. Perhaps it was because John and Annalisa Gilbert raised the young Charles as their own son that he gave this quilt of his mother's to Talula, who was not to receive one of her own mother's quilts. I'm still really salty about that.
I know.
And then it says, note attached to quilts made by Jerusha Gilbert, Almira's grandmother, is partly in error. It was probably written long after Talula's death, when memory of what she told her daughter was fading. Though it is strange, Almira would forget that it was Holly who was her grandmother. Several other articles handmade, living with Talula's descendants. So the reason I wanted to bring this up is when we're talking about quilt history, especially when you're doing like documentation and people bring in family quilts and they say like, here's the story and blah, 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 blah. It's often not totally factual. And some people get really offended by discussion of that. And it's not to say that like someone's a jerk or, you're just wrong. This is the perfect example of how easy it is to just get one little name wrong, and now you've attributed something to someone. And it's not to say that like anyone did anything wrong or malicious, or this is just to say like when you get those family histories, sometimes you kind of have to be skeptical when you go in to maybe do the genealogy or things like that, and you're looking at stuff. Because example, like if off the top of my head, I'm not looking at the family tree, so like no one correct me, this is all just, but if they attributed this quilt that they can tell is made in the 1850s by the fabrics and the techniques and things like that, but they're going to attribute it to someone, let's say, that couldn't have been living at that time, that would kind of be your clue that maybe someone, messed up a name in the family history and stuff like that. And I immediately wrote that. I'm like, oh my God, perfect example of the thing everyone's always talking about. And then,
yeah. No, go ahead.
Say, do you have anything to say about this quote?
I was just gonna say, because when I read this, I was like, yeah, why did Elmira forget? But I'm wondering, like, there's no date on this note. So it could have been a situation where, Elmira, maybe elderly, told somebody who wrote the note, it was made maybe by my grandmother's sister, and that sister part got forgotten after she said it. It's one of those things that wouldn't necessarily be Elmira that wrote the note and forgot who her grandmother was, but it could have been and you're absolutely right. These stories, and I have stories like that in my own family. Some of them are horrible. But there was a story that had been perpetuated, and my mom was like, yeah, this is what happened. And I was like, no, it's not. And she's like, oh, who told you different? I was like, the newspaper and the court records. So it's like, these stories kind of take on a life of their own. And then by the time somebody thinks to write it down, they're going like, oh, yeah, this is what I was told. And it's
playing a game of telephone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And then this other one, oh my God, this quilt is
I love it so much. Yeah, I mean, it's just,
this Make Do is just,
it's so random, and it's so fun.
Stunning. Yeah, I just love, I love all, like, this looks like this is just like the coziest quilt ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it annoys me that it was made by someone that I know wasn't very nice. But we'll just
I forgot about did not giving the child water, but also giving him a bowel wash.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I'm wondering if that at this time means an enema.
Yes.
Or if it means something else.
No, it means an enema. Yeah, you've got some stuff coming out that's not the right thing.
We'll put stuff in there that wasn't supposed to be in there in the first place.
Let's hose it off in there. Wow. Yeah. So let's see. Grief, 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 more
Yeah, we've
malaria.
got like minted
Grief,
dyes
grief.
and
Yeah. Oh, there's the flu epidemic.
oh, Janet just mentioned that enemas have been used to lower temps.
Interesting.
I've
I had
never
never heard
heard
that.
that.
I had never heard that either, but I mean, I guess if it was cold water.
You've got
Shoot, shoot
you
it
got a
up there.
creature. You got a
Cool off your
creature back
insides.
there.
I know. Gotta cool off your insides with some cold water. But yeah, so when everybody's sick, oh my gosh. When Eliza came home from Alabama and she's the sickest of all, and she kept getting out of bed and going to the kitchen door to vomit to save people trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Well, bless her, but oh God. I
As
think this all
someone,
just, oh.
yeah, as someone who's had like the Norwalk virus, like when it first came out years ago, I could not imagine getting out of bed to go to the kitchen door for like anything. I literally, when I don't know that I've ever been that sick in my life since. I literally called my mother from my bed and very seriously asked her to kill me. Like it was that bad.
Yeah, that is pretty bad. Um, yeah, I've been very sick. And I mean, I think that I guess the choice is to barf in the slop bucket, which is also your chamber pot essentially. I mean, unless they're gonna get you a separate bucket to throw up in, I don't know. It just seems like she probably was trying to do everybody a favor.
Oh, for sure,
Um,
because that one person that was there caring for all of them, oof. It's a wonder she
yeah.
didn't die by the end.
I know, and oh, you bless the people that will take care of sick people, at the risk of getting sick themselves. Because yeah, I just, I've been in a situation where me, Rob, and Connor were all sick. Well, I mean, just this year we all had COVID at the same time. And it was like, don't talk to me about how bad you feel. I promise you I feel worse. And it's just like, and then if you're like crammed together, ugh.
Well, especially if you all have like ailments that require the bathroom. And like
Well,
let's say you only have like two bathrooms but three people and
mhm.
everyone needs it at the same time.
Thankfully, I have not had one of those situations in my home since Connor was little. We all got something at the same time, and he was little. He was still diapers, so. But yeah, I'm assuming it was Norwalk, and I had that last year. I was the only one that got it, so
Oh, that's lucky.
yeah. Oh,
Um,
and then after the flu, they had the measles.
I know that I couldn't believe that. I'm like, oh yeah, they haven't fully recovered, and then they one by one get measles. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. It was a nightmarish time. Yeah, like, no shit, it was nightmarish.
I really
Oh
enjoyed
my
on
goodness.
page 90 that Talula is talking about hand carding her own batting for her feather quilt.
Yeah.
That
Oh, is this in her
I was like,
little,
oh look, something pleasant. I'm sure it's short-lived, but at least
well,
something pleasant.
1892, she has her first daughter, um, who I believe survived till adulthood, so that's good.
One thing that I found very interesting here is that kind of between pages 90 and 91 here, I had wrote here that I find it interesting that many people have disputed the notion of women quilting at night by fire, because the light's so poor. But then here we have firsthand account of
Hmm.
someone quilting by splinter torches in the fall with the loss of daylight.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
understand
yeah.
what they're describing by what like a splinter torch is. I don't know that I've ever seen one and just how bright they are. I would be interested to see that. Hey, that's another possible experimental archaeology thing is let's get us some splinter torches and quilt outside in the dark.
I don't know about that.
Arlene just asked, have you gals read or watched the Outlander series? Setting is
Yeah.
really I don't know if you missed a word there, but you said setting is pre. I think you mean to say like pre-revolution. Oh yeah, during post-revolutionary war period.
Pre, during, and post. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
One of the
starts like at
characters is a local
17 or something.
doctor, reminds me of the book. So Arlene, I am catching up on that. I have to tell you, I loved Outlander when it first started, and then once they came to the US, I found it kind of got boring.
Yeah, I think I watched maybe 4 or 5 seasons of it. I don't know how many seasons there've been.
So I
4
think we
seasons
just
maybe.
finished season 5, and we need to watch season 6. But yes, I am familiar. We are familiar with Outlander.
Yeah. Yes, in terms of beliefs and the way of doing, yeah, uh-huh. Well, and in fact, I believe it was Outlander. It's the episode where I think it's the episode where she has a beautiful red dress.
When they're in France?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a point in there where it's in some type of, I mean, it was priests and nuns who were the doctors, basically. And there was a situation where they had like a vessel of urine and the doctor was like,
oh, when
diabetes.
Yeah, when they used to taste it, yeah.
And that's the thing they did.
Well, you know what's funny is in Outlander too, Claire almost dies giving birth to their first child that doesn't make it because a piece of the placenta didn't come out. But yes, I digress. On Outlander.
Here was something. So yes, those torches called lightered. Okay, so that is on page 91. But they mentioned this, if this is the part where they're sick, where page 87. Yeah. So 87, where the part where Eliza says, it says Eliza was, going to throw up out the kitchen door, and it says she refused to drink the lightered tea. I wonder what does that mean? Lightered tea and lightered torches, like, so.
Because it said lightered is cut from rich pine knots. Produced a bright flame. I wonder if it's something to do with like something from the pine that's
I don't know,
used in the tea or something.
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, that's a possibility because I do know that I think it's spruce. It's not pine, but it's spruce. The little buds on the ends of the branches, the little they could take those and make like a jelly out of them.
Oh.
Like they get like an infusion and make it into a jelly, and it's surprisingly good. Like you would never, it doesn't taste like pine or like evergreen, but it's like, it's rich in vitamin C. So I'm kind of wondering if,
maybe like that's where they were going with that. I guess that would be something to look up. Arlene, I did, my brother and I were the ones that were watching Outlander. I did buy him the series for Christmas when we first started watching it some years ago. He hasn't read them and I haven't read them either. I know that the books are supposed to be way better.
I think I heard that it's the first few seasons pretty religiously follow the books, but then they go off onto like things get very well, they diverge, digress,
like on the last note of that chapter, like, oh my god, the quilts.
Like this feather. This one, oh my gosh, so beautiful. Yes.
And I have to say, like, the Rocky Mountain, well, what they're calling Rocky Mountain, which I guess a lot of people also call like New York Beauty, like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, just those tiny little slivers of points.
I can't even picture like making something like that.
You know what's really interesting, and I noticed it in the little piece about this one. I think as soon as she got a treadle machine, she started sewing her bindings by machine now. And I'm just like, oh, I wish that they had been able to get some close-ups of the binding.
Yeah.
And I really love the fact that, she talked about like how if it was folded to the back or folded to the front, and that it would have been hand stitched down or done on the machine. I thought that was cool that she provided that information, but I really wish they had been able to get like just the corner so you could see.
And then when we go into chapter 13 here,
okay, wait.
Alabama.
Wait. So chapter 12.
Mm-hmm.
So page 89. So let's see. How she did miss Mother Eliza, the bravest woman, and Bobby too, who had died with such a mysterious ailment and whose voice, when he led the songs, had lifted people almost to the doors of heaven. Well, let's flip to the end notes and find out about Bobby's death.
Oh,
I'll just read it to you.
yeah.
So, when her son, Robert Hampton Bottoms, died after having become paralyzed, the doctors were puzzled and wanted to do an autopsy. Eliza would not allow his body to be used in a way she considered desecration. After he was buried in the family graveyard, the family heard rumors that some local boys planned to rob his grave and sell his body for a large sum of money. For a month or longer, Tom and George, who were his brothers, took turns sleeping beside their brother's grave with their hound dog, Roud, or Rude, R-O-U-D, Roud, to alert them. That was interesting, but here's the best part. The family believed it was a fish bone he had swallowed years before that made its way to his brain.
Huh.
And that, folks, is some ignorant ass stuff that my relatives would say. My grandmother used to tell me not to eat too much candy because you'll get worms.
Worms from candy?
So yeah, these are the kind of people that will say things like, you know, he swallowed a fish bone years ago. It finally went to his brain. Oh, these Southern folk. When I read that, I was like, I can't even.
Yeah, I didn't read the juicy stuff.
All right. So, Sand Mountain. We were
Yeah,
getting ready to
wrapping
talk
up
about that.
here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel really sorry that they were all so homesick. Like
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they left, and it was like he was planning to leave. Tom was planning to leave all along, and then the farm got saved, but he's like, I can't stay. I gotta go anyway. And he finally drags her there, but they were never happy. I, I just, it breaks my heart. You know, like
Marodim said maybe they were talking about tequila candy might have worms.
No, my grandmother was specifically speaking about Russell Stover. And
Oh.
it was not the kind of thing where I don't think she literally believed that. At least I hope she didn't. But it was just the kind of things that people said. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this was my dad's mother, who I was close to all my grandparents, but not as close as like my mom's mother, who was like very, very logical person, like would have never said something like that. Whereas my other grandma was the kind, that is just the kind of things people said. Got too much candy now, you're gonna get worms. Like, just the kind of thing. Don't swallow a fish bone, it might go to your brain, kill ya. Like, people.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, like my grandfather on my mother's side, he used to talk all the time about Poughkeepsie, New York. And I guess somewhere around that area was some Amish family he knew. And then they went down to Pennsylvania or something like that. I don't remember the exact story, but he used to talk about it all the time. And I used to be like, Grandpa, will you take me there? And I couldn't say the word right. And he'd be like, I will. And he would put me in the car, and we lived on a cul-de-sac, and he would drive me around the cul-de-sac. And I was convinced, remember, I couldn't say the word right. So
That you had been to Poughkeepsie.
I was so convinced. I came home and like, Mom, Grandpa just took me to Kipoopski. And it's so funny when I went down to seminar last year, and I kind of went through a little bit of upstate New York before I went down into Pittsburgh. It was the easier driving. I drove by a sign for Poughkeepsie and was just like, Grandpa, like, because he's long gone.
To Poopski?
Yeah, to Kipoopski. Anyways, tequila worms and Kipoopskis.
So Sand Mountain is it's funny how she mentions the Georgia crackers. Um, and I think there's a piece of information about Sand Mountain that I will not say right now because I think it comes up in one of the chapters I read ahead into. But it was one of the things where I was like,
Well,
Georgia crackers. Let's just leave it at that. Georgia crackers.
how about this scary thing on 102? One night at supper, when Tom had gone off to Atala, Talula was quite beside herself with the children's quarreling. Exacerbated, she told them if they didn't quiet down, some animal would come and get them. For panthers, wildcats, and wild hogs were said to roam the woods. She had hardly spoken when the dog sat up, a furious barking, and a heavy thud struck the kitchen door. The children fell suddenly silent, frozen in fear, for a scratching of heavy claws shook and rattled the door. Talula fastened the wooden hatch and hustled the scared children off to the beds, frightened herself. The next morning, they found great marks scarring the kitchen door and big tracks in the yard. Their old hound dog was cowering under the house. Oh my God. Like,
sounds like a bear to me.
Well, I know, but like that would scare. I probably would have just died right there. Like I'm talking about animals coming to get you, and then like all of a sudden, just like, like
to be. I mean, you think about these places were all like the absolute, rural forest kind of. These were not the burbs, and so yeah, she probably did not have a neighbor very nearby, and yeah, like terrifying.
like the bear was probably like, this pie you left out is sugar free. Like,
but what I was gonna say before at the beginning of the chapter, the piece about how much he paid.
Oh yeah, 600.
And they could have had it for $18. That was interesting. I mean, in terms of homesteading, how that worked and like, what I guess if you're there first or you're an early grabbing onto early manifest destiny, you could get like basically free land. Well, I mean, $18 wasn't free, but
$18 sure wasn't 600.
Yeah, well, and $600 at the time. I mean, I didn't do the conversion, but that was a lot of money, like a lot of money. But I thought it was funny that the mountain or the town was named for the guy who had assisted Sherman burning Atlanta, and that is what the Georgia Crackers didn't know.
Well, let's end the chapter on a nicer note and look at this quilt on 101.
Yes.
The Snowball, 1900 to 1905, a quilt made early by Talula's older daughter Almira, who apparently didn't like quilting very much.
Right, yes.
But this quilt is stunning. It's gorgeous.
It is. And so this one, if I'm understanding correctly about this one in particular, is that literally is a circular thing that is set in, right?
It appears so, yeah.
Because like the snowball that I've seen in like a pattern that might be called snowball today, to me is like it's a square that has its corners clipped, and the little triangle that's there is the same color as the background, so it gives it kind of a circular shape. But this is almost like you pieced like an uneven 9-patch, and I think so that like if that was a 9-patch, that would be put in the corner, I think, because it's got the big one in the center and then the little ones in the corners. Yeah, it's like you pieced like that and then cut it into a circle and then then pieced it into a square. It's just crazy to me.
Well, and if this was her first quilt, I could see why she didn't like quilting anymore. Like doing curves like your first time around.
Right?
That's really probably not the best way to start. Also, Janet mentioned back to going to Alabama for $18. He could have gotten it for less, but she didn't want to go.
She didn't want to go.
And the only reason she ended up going was the promise that his malaria would subside. And I mean, I guess that's a good reason to go. But I can see where she'd be pretty resentful of it and the kids. But I do like the fact too, right at the end there, that they did get money together to build a schoolhouse since there wasn't one for
Yeah, and
children to
I
attend.
loved that story at the end when they're talking about that and how, I mean, she was, I mean, you think about it, she was not super educated herself because
Yeah,
she had to stay out of school so often, taking care of stuff at home.
being
Yet
Cinderella.
yet she becomes a teacher to
Hmm.
these children until they actually could, have a real schoolhouse. And I love the part about they they felled a tree for the children to use as a footbridge, and only once or twice did a child fall off.
Hey, that's good odds there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But this quilt, this
Mhm.
one that's
Mhm.
on page 96, um, I just love the look of that quilt. And I realized it's stained and faded. And I'm guessing that this kind of like ombre-ish look in there is probably the fugitive dye from here. Like,
Mhm.
or not, I guess that wouldn't really be a fugitive dye. It would just, it ran into here, I'm guessing, right? I mean, is that what you would assume based on how,
Let me look at it a little. What page was it again?
page 96?
96.
It said it was washed many times.
So given that that dye that you're talking about, right, goes
Mhm,
all the way down and you can see like clear demarcation on either side that it's lighter, that
mhm.
tells me that you're seeing maybe something from the backing fabric coming forward.
That makes sense.
Some of this other stuff here, the on the outside border, I
Mhm.
would think has far more to do maybe with light, but because you can see like some fold marks right down the center there.
Well, yeah, that center here, that fold mark, like it's almost like it's either the original color or it was faded
Well, that fold line is
through
what's
there.
kind of telling you that that's likely some fading.
Hmm.
But I feel like sometimes there's so many options because you can definitely have some things that were running,
Hmm.
depending on how this was sitting on things or folded. It also could be if it was in a trunk with wood oils,
Yeah,
like you
that's
could be
true.
dealing with some of that kind of issue. I will say though, man, did they love themselves some fan quilting.
Yeah.
Most quilts
I
are done in the
know, I know.
fan.
Well, that's so funny though. I mean, they talk about, a Baptist fan. That's how my great grandmother, she only quilted with Baptist fan.
Hmm.
And I guess is it because it's sort of an easy, I don't know. It's an easy one to eyeball if you're gonna
Yeah,
eyeball it.
this weird color coming through the middle. I wonder if they had like a real deep black or blue on the back or something. And with that,
Yeah.
with it, because we know that they're potentially doing all of their own batting creation.
Hmm.
Could the batting have been thin enough or something where like you can
It
start to
just, yeah,
see
came
things?
through.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That
Yeah,
just
and
makes me
so that's
wonder.
another situation where I wish, okay. All right, you guys, if you ever have the authority in a book of quilts, there should be a little inset showing the corner flipped over close up so you could see both the binding and the back.
Hmm. It's funny too, because like the way it's sitting, it also could potentially be, was it sitting on a bed, right? And
Hmm.
the lighter sides were hanging off the bed, getting more sunlight exposure than the very
Hmm.
top if it was coming through
Could be,
windows.
could be.
And what you're seeing on the top could possibly be more true to the original color. Could there maybe have been another quilt on top of it that transferred some dark color? You know what I mean? Like I
Hmm.
without,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah, when I looked at it, I was just trying to think like, what happened here? And they probably like, I mean, it was probably, I mean, because again, you look at it, was probably upsetting
mhm.
that, even if this was not, well, I mean, I think this is more than an everyday quilt. But just I'm thinking I would be upset if something bled all over that like that. But on the
Mhm.
other hand, it looks really neat. Like that's that kind of, weird over dye on fabric is something that, like
Well,
like the
actually the
grunge
fact you mentioned
series and
that,
stuff like that.
maybe we're dealing with hand dyed fabric on that border, and maybe
See?
something has
Well, and that's
run them up
kind
with
of
that.
at first what I thought, that it was something from the border had bled into the quilt. But,
It says
in
it was
looking at it,
washed many times.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know exactly what they mean, potentially like what's many times. Um,
yeah.
And who knows, maybe they washed it with turpentine. And that had something, reacted with some of the color.
That turpentine.
Janet with the Baptist fan said Bonnie Hunter uses those fans. Yes, she does. For her hand quilting a lot because she starts on the outside edge and goes around and around until the middle. That is true. Bonnie Hunter loves herself some Baptist fans. Janet, I'm a total Bonnie Hunter fan. Totally been to her retreat house a couple times. If you've never gone, totally worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I mean, I think that's gonna do it for me, unless you have other things to say.
Well, and okay, granted, I did read ahead a little bit, but I think the thing that just still, the two things that still really just, head explode about Talula is through all of this stuff. I mean, you would imagine the average person would just be like, Lord, I can't take no more. But she just kept trucking and making quilts all along, making quilts, making quilts, making quilts. And then also writing letters. And there's and I'm not spoiling anything by saying this, but there is a point where there's a period of time where there are no letters. There's like a gap. And I think Nancilu says that, it was likely because of what was going on. She was just too busy, but she kept up like massive correspondence. And even, when they talked about her being kind of the temporary teacher for her kids and the other children, she had them writing letters, and I feel like that is how, I think despite the fact that she did not have as much schooling as her siblings, I think that's like how she kind of kept her mind lively. She was a writer. She liked to write. And I feel like people who are writers are, they also tend to be, I don't know, they tend to be the kind of people that are always gathering information. And, I mean, I think that alone speaks so much about her, I don't know, her wisdom and her wit and her perseverance, that she just.
I can't keep a straight face when it looks like your chair is moving.
I think he's decided he's gonna dig a hole through my chair. What are you doing? What are you doing back here? Oh, you've got your claws in a quilt. For shame. So, yeah, I mean, I remain just amazed by Talula. I'm so angry about all the bad things that happened to her and her family.
I know, I'm really hoping at some point she kind of gets her deserved justice somehow. Great.
Well, let's just say it's gonna get worse before it gets better again.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's just, these are people that, lived hard lives after the Civil War. And even with, they never went hungry, they always had a garden and something, but they otherwise were just, scratching the dirt for what they had. So, but I do feel pretty strongly that we're getting ready to get into some real good quilts. And yeah, there's one or two quilts here that are going to be in this future reading that I was like, that's an amazing quilt. So cool.
Yeah, so for anyone that came in late for next Tuesday, we're gonna do chapters 14 through 16, and that'll mean after that we have one more chunk before we're done with Talula.
Yeah, and check out the endnotes. You never know what else you might find in the endnotes.
Well, at least we know if we don't check out the endnotes, you are, so that you can tell us the juicy tea.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just as a last minute reminder for anyone that came in late or didn't see or anything, stuff is not streaming on our Twitch this Thursday because we're going to the Penn Dry Goods show. So we'll have stories and stuff to tell you about that. And hopefully we'll remember to take some pictures or, a little bit of something to maybe put up on the YouTube. I mean, the Instagram and things like that. We will try.
We need to start doing some fun clips, some YouTube, what are they called? Shorts. YouTube shorts. Maybe we'll start with our Schwenkfelder, our Schwenkfelder visit. Yeah. By the way, for those of you, I'm sorry, what?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, for those of you that were on my stream yesterday and I mentioned the Schwenkfelder Center, our friend Barb confirmed for me that the Schwenkfelders still exist. There are still, I think she said 4 congregations, and she named the one that is the most active, and now I can't remember what it's called, but I mean, it's basically like, the central Schwenkfelder, whatever. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. They're still around.
And one of a fellow quilt nerd is going to be there, aren't they?
Yes, I'm trying to.
Our friend, did you say our friend Jen is going to be there?
Oh yes, yep. Our friend Jen is going to be
so
there.
we might have some pictures with another quilt nerd. We'll see.
Yeah,
We shall see.
We'll have a few of the people that we sometimes talk about.
Yeah. But we'll definitely have stories and show and tell. This is antique show meets lecture series.
Yeah.
And then
so
we're also going, because our friend Anne Hermes is giving her own lecture on gingham embroidery. Is that what it is?
Chicken scratch. I think it's on chicken scratch. Yeah. Well, it's not on chicken scratch specifically. It's gingham embroidery, of which chicken scratch is one type.
Oh, so we will have things to talk about. So that'll be next Tuesday. And then Steph will be back on her stream on Monday. So
yep, I will be back on Monday. And we are reading the Chintz book. I know everybody's been so excited about that. But don't forget, Saturday begins Merryweather Wax.
That's right. That's right.
The Weather Wax along. So like I said at the top of the show, it's not too late. You could still get it as a PDF, the pattern. And
that is true. You don't have to have the book. You can get it immediately.
Get the PDF. And if you decide not for me right now, but in 50 days, you can join anytime. It's fine. So,
and don't forget that there's a Facebook group specifically for the Merryweather Wax pattern holders, where Dawn has allowed Steph to kind of put her stuff in there for people to talk about. And it's kind of like a quilt nerd takeover.
Let me, just because I need to get better at doing things like this. Oh crud, where is it? Here it is. Copy the link. I'll put it in here.
Boy, did we go overtime tonight.
There's a link. Yeah, we did. Oh gosh, yeah, we did. Okay.
All right, guys. Well, I have to go and pack and get my stuff ready to head out of town on Thursday. Watch the Instagram, watch the Facebook, where we'll post stuff, and you can post stuff that you want to share with us on the Facebook, and there's all kinds of places to connect. Yeah. And with that, I guess we're out. Oh, bye, kitty. Bye, kitty.